Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Psychology and Spirituality, a Bridge to a Better Life discussion. I'm your host, Marcia Trajano, and with me are Dr. Anahy Fonseca, Jussara Korngold, and Anne Sinclair. Welcome back, everyone. But if this is the first time you're watching this podcast-like program, please note that the Psychology and Spirituality weekly talks are based on the works by Joanna de Angelis, and we're here in a safe space where we can compare, correlate, and expand our own concepts that are spiritual in nature, but also bring in a psychological lens and also uh, fitting in some insights, maybe some actionable tips, and maybe even some advice to all of us so that we can lead a better life. What are we here to talk today? In today's episode, we will discuss the concept of higher self. But what is it? Well, Joanna de Angelis calls it by the self, capital S. It is also referred by other people by different names, right? The divine within, or even the superconscious. But I'd love to hear more from Dr. Fonseca so that we can better understand what is this concept of higher self and why do we even need to talk about it? But before we start our conversation, I'd like to recognize the organizations that are sponsoring our program, and they are AME Brazil, the TV Mansão do Caminho, the International Spiritist Council, and the United States Spiritist Federation. I'd like to remind everyone, if you'd like to hear more from us, please hit subscribe if you haven't done so, and check us out at www.spiritist.us. Have any questions? You have any comments, any feedback, please write them down in the chat window so that we can address them today or later. And I'm just thinking about it, right? As we start to begin our conversation today, when we talk about higher self, there's so many things that come to my mind. What is it? And what do you think are we going to be talking about? What is the higher self?
Hi everybody. Yeah, so in preparation for this session today, I was doing a little bit of background reading because, as you know, I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist by background. I'm just a member of the public. And so I was doing a little bit of reading, trying to get some understanding. And I was having some difficulty. But one of the things that comes to mind always, as you said at the beginning, and I refer to the Spirits book by Allan Kardec, where he asks the spirits lots of different questions. And in some part, he asks them backwards and forwards about the same question. And what the spirits answer is, call things as you wish, as long as you are agreed about what you're talking about. So it says, the words don't matter as long as we have agreed that this word will represent this or that. So I think that would be quite useful for us to establish some basic understanding of what we're talking about. But it's partly of the difficulty talking about the higher self is because we're very familiar with our ego, with our daily lives, and we identify with that, and that's quite straightforward in a way. When we talk about something that is different to that, but is part of the whole, I find it's a little bit it's difficult for me to get my head around it. I kind of get a gist, but I can't pin it down at this stage of my evolution, let's put it like that. But we progress, we move, and we study, we learn, we reflect, and each time we can go developing a little bit more understanding. But maybe Anahy can help us out a little bit with her expert knowledge.
Yes, fair enough. Anayi, what do you think? Can you enlighten us with this notion of higher self?
So, hello everyone. Yeah, it's quite interesting. I myself had the same problem as Anne because I practice, and my practice was pretty much Freudian in my early days. So Freud talks about the ego, our consciousness, right, and personality, uh, and so we are used to thinking that we have only at this point, and until we're studying Freud, that we have a personality and we have an ego, right? And the ego is our consciousness. Okay, final statement, right? But then comes Jung. Along comes Jung, and a little bit of history for you, so that I think it will make easier for everybody that is watching us, okay, to connect with this. So a very interesting fact about Jung, it's in all his biography and in his autobiography, Memory, Dreams, Reflections, that he recognized in himself two practically opposite personalities, and each linked to a different times. And it was not dissociation, okay, people. It was not multiple personalities, but it was kind of an insight, and it was in his early teenage years that he describes. He used to go walking to his school. Okay, it was in the countryside, so it would have a mist in Switzerland early morning. And then he said one day he was walking to his school, and he went out of this mist, and then he just had a thought, oh, I am I am this person here, okay? And yeah, but I am this person. So that teenagers have abstract thinking. It different from, we have already talked about that when we talked about the inner child and childhood years. So he started to think about himself. But we know through his biography that his grandmother was the first person that would talk about two personalities. One personality, like in this time, okay, the ego, and that was when he gets out of the mist and, oh, I am this person. Then the ego, okay, we can see that he was reflecting about himself. But Jung says also that from early days in his childhood, he had this kind of sense that there was something else, okay, besides this person that is, okay. And then we have Sonu Shandasani, that it's a British scholar that we consider like Jung's official biographer, okay, historian, let's say. And he says that Jung also had the impression of living in two centuries his whole life, and he felt a strong nostalgia for the 18th century. His sense of duality took the form of two alternating personalities, which he numbered personality 1 and 2. Okay, so personality 1 was the Basel boy, the Swiss boy, who would read novels, okay? And personality number 2 was the one who was a very solitary person and pursued religious musings in a state of communion. So this personality inhabited, that was Jung's insight, God's world. So we can see the personality 1 would be the ego, right? That Freud studied very well. Our consciousness, the center, Jung says the center of personality, the personality that is living this time, adapting to the world and also to the world within, instincts and all this, our biology, our perceptions from the internal and external world. And personality 2 okay, that would be like connected to history, okay, like ancient. And for Jung, his personality too was pretty much like from the past, from like Middle Ages. He would look to his shoes when he connected to, well, this personality too, and see old shoes from 18th or 17th century. Okay, so I would like now if Jussara could, and Anne and you, Marcia, could, what do you have, so that we can explain better and talk more about that. When we say personality too, uh, being in communion with God's world, what do you think about that?
I was thinking while you were talking, and how rich it was, his experience,
Right.
because he was paying attention, right? I mean, he was not someone special. Of course, he was special in his way in everything that he did, but ordinary person like all of us, we all can go through the same processes of the mind, of paying attention to what is really going on with us, regardless of what situation we are living, we were brought up. And it's interesting as well that it's mentioned that he came to this realization in the teenager years, and even studying Joanna de Angelis, and we are so blessed that Divaldo Franco is a faithful representation of Joanna de Angelis here on earth, and managed to bring all this intrinsic concepts that she describes in her books to the letter, and and so one of the things that she mentions and she talks about as well is the childhood years as being the ones that we are still more connected with the life that we were living as a spirit. And just in the teenager years, during that adolescence phase where many people say, oh my God, my child is a totally different person. Yes, it is a totally different person. And this is one thing that we can see here happening to Jung, not in a negative way, but like, all of a sudden he feels himself, I am. He feels himself complete as a spirit, not anymore dissociated by, the early years that do not allow, it's more the abstract thoughts, like you said, does not allow him to, or any child, to go through and to dig deeper into experiences, into the real being. And of course, making a parallel very much like here, we have, we miss our childhood years, the carelessness. There was always someone paying attention to us, so I could live not worrying that much. And with the real adult life, which is what is happening here. So it's like all of a sudden, of course, it was a sum up of things. I don't think it just came in a split of a second, but where you add everything and say, I am. And this is what it is. And so I think it's so extraordinary the way that he mentions that, and he talks about it and brings so many concepts and spiritual concepts. So like you were saying here, personality too longs for the cosmos, longs for an identity, to identify with something greater than just the corporeal being and everything that surrounds this corporeal being. So I think it's something that we can experience in so many different phases of our lives. Here we are focusing more on this kind of, the teenager years, because it was what happened to them. But it's like, the more we advance in years, it's like we peel off some of, and going through different levels and understanding different levels. And so let's see what Anne or Marcia wants to talk about.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Anne, on this whole idea? Because the first thing when I first read that, real quick here, Anne, was, what are we talking about? Dissociative personality disorder. And no, if you're listening to us, it's not. This is very important, right? The baseline of this conversation, this is not. This is really to understand the duality of he experienced the duality that we all find ourselves in. But Anne, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so it's interesting, because if we take like from the perspective of what the spirits have taught us through the spirits book, we are eternal spirits having a temporary experience in the flesh on earth,
Yes.
with all the possibilities that that gives us. So in order to adjust to this life, when we're born like babies, we need to go through the different phases of development of childhood and adolescence, so that we can adjust to the body, and we can adjust to the new experience of who our family is, where we live, which country, which culture, what's going on in the world around us. And it's the development of the ego is going to enable us to transition to live on earth and do what we need to do and have our material lives, and get a job or go to school and have a family and do all the normal things of life. However, that's only half the story. And it's because our society is so materialistic, we get very caught up in that. I mean, I speak for myself, yeah, just generalizing, but everything in society is connecting us to the material aspect of our journey, of our experience on earth. So we sometimes kind of forget that we are eternal spirit. But the higher self, or the spirit, that is that cosmic being that is having this experience, sends us messages, like almost like, when somebody sits in the back of the class and they throw a piece of chalk or something, like, hello, I'm here, remember me? That's how I get it, that it's sending a message. You're thinking like, is this it? Have the job, have the progression, have the salary, have the house, have the car, have the 2 kids, whatever. Is this it? Is this? Because when you have that feeling, is this it? What you're saying is, I know that this is not it, but I can't remember what else is it. And particularly, a lot of us have become, well, I can say, like, particularly in Europe or in the United Kingdom, like the significance of established church. They don't have the same impact culturally as they had in the past. But yet, as individuals, as humans, we have this impulse towards spirituality. We don't know where to look for it. We're wondering, what does it mean? And doesn't necessarily mean that you have to follow any kind of religion. And it's interesting because Joanna de Angelis says that the pathway back to ourselves is an equal pathway that is given by religion and by psychology. I found it really interesting to say, like, if you want to follow a religious pathway, you can follow that. But if you want to follow a psychological pathway, that's also open to you. So what is it? Is coming back to self. Is like remembering who I am, why I'm here, and what is that my life is not about building the material, which is important to have my material things so I can have time to think about these other things. But it's not the ultimate. So
Yeah,
what is the ultimate? To try
yeah,
to go back and say, how do I reconnect with this bigger me, this higher self, who is sending messages to me, that it's existed since the beginning, that carries the memory of all my incarnations prior to this one, which, thank goodness, I don't remember them all, because if not, I'll be in a jumble of this and that. But I am the result of all that progress at this moment. So I am what I am, like, I am, as Jung would say. And it's not about, like, we live in the time of media and influencers and image and photoshopping everything around, like refining our image to something that's completely false, that's not us anymore. So we really need to be looking at what is this essence that we are, and how can we explore this, and what does it mean, how can it change the meaning of our lives. So sorry, I spoke too much, but yeah, that's
No,
the
no,
general going on.
you didn't. But Anna, before I ask you to take back on this discussion, there's a couple of things that you said that I just wanted to share here, and because when we talked about this idea that in the UK or in Europe, generically speaking, the power of church, right, is changed through time, but still we are thirsting, if you will, for our religiosity, our sense of connection with the divine more than ever. And the picture that comes to my mind is of us walking or traveling through the desert and really thirsting for something, but we don't even know that is everywhere, right? It's in the cosmos, it's in the stars, it's in the air that we breathe, and we see nothing because it's a very lone path that we're going through if we don't know how to find it. So that's the first one. And the other thing that you mentioned that I thought was quite interesting, it's the idea that we again we are lost, but we don't know how to reconnect because the paradigm that we live through in this we're talking about 21st century, right? We're talking about Western society. It is a paradigm of no longer what we have, but now what do you seem to have? So power by proxy. My the person, the legend in the living room, if you will, the selfie by, I don't know, the famous singer, the famous actor, whatever is the most famous person out there with the most clicks. And if I simply have a selfie with that person, I already become as equally important, which is all illusion, right? The paradigm that Joanna de Angelis speaks quite a lot about, the being versus seeming, right? But a lot of interesting ideas. But I really want us to dive into that notion of higher self. What are your thoughts, Anahy? How can we explain further, especially based on what you explain of Jung's and this what could be interpreted as a split personality, which is not. It's just awareness of the duality, the spirit and the material dimension.
Well, actually, I want to connect everything that you all said and brought
Awesome.
to the discussion, because when Anne says that Joanna talks about the ways of connecting to ourselves could be and to this cosmic reality, right? That it's
Mhm.
within all of us, the transcendence, our capacity of transcendence. That it could, the paths can be through religion or through psychology. And also, Jussara talks about this realization that we are more than just our ego, right?
Mhm.
And you are also bringing all these aspects of having and sinning, and what do we perceive about the world around us and about ourselves. So why does Joanna say that we have these two paths, both of them, religion or psychology? Because so if we know that we are, as spiritist knowledge bring to us, and all through times, uh, through the centuries, a lot of spirits from spirits realms come to tell us that we are immortal beings, right? So, of course, our consciousness cannot be only the ego consciousness, this personality, because this personality is dealing with this reality, this
Right.
present time, right? And this material world. So unfortunately, a lot still of psychiatrists, psychologists, psychotherapists think that the mind, our mind, comes from the brain, and when you die, then everything game over. Okay, so but we are in a new era, and we know through spiritist knowledge that we are advancing and moving towards an expansion of consciousness. So at the same time that a lot of people are still in this materialistic view, we know and we can see, even in science, that there is a new paradigm, okay, a new understanding of reality, and it's a spiritual understanding of reality, okay. And even in science, with the near death experiences and other anomalous experiences, their spiritual experiences, deathbed visions, a lot of experiences like that scientists and psychiatrists and psychologists are studying. So what happens is that psychology, until in the beginning, okay, we say that kind of lost the soul. And it's kind of strange because it's psychology. So from psych, okay, that it's the goddess psych, so eros and psych. And it is from ancient Greek, the soul. So we can not lose the soul. There would be no point. Okay, we have an ego, we have a personality number one, like to say that, like Jung says, but we are much more than that, because and we don't have even to, we just have to pay attention. We don't have to follow, for instance, any religion if we don't want, as Anne was remind us all that Joanna says, we can go through psychology, because psychology by definition is the study of the psyche, of the soul. And Allan Kardec also, right, talks about the study of psychology in the beginning of spiritism and all the writings and the book of spirits, because we are studying the spirit, and the soul is the spirit reincarnated, right? So we are all studying the same thing. And this spirit is an intelligent being of creation, right? Jussara and everybody else. So we have to, if we are studying the spirit and studying the soul, we are studying this higher self, this divine self, divine consciousness within our let's say our personality, deep inside the unconscious, where Jung says is the transpersonal dimension of the unconscious, or the collective unconscious, as either way we can talk about that. So there, deep inside the unconscious, Jung found, again, thanks God, our soul, the
Mhm.
principle of our soul, this higher consciousness, like his grandmother had told him, personality number two, we could say. Okay. And Joanna says that this self with capital S, because another authors use the self as the same as personality. Okay. And Jung says, no, the self is this higher consciousness with deep within our unconscious. So in this consciousness, this expanded consciousness, is connected to the centuries. That isn't that wonderful? So has all our experiences, all our knowledge. Okay. So that's why Joanna says that the self, Jung's self, capital S, is the spirit, because this consciousness deep within our unconscious is connected with the centuries, has the knowledge, all the experiences that our spirit has gone through in this many reincarnations. So of course, can you imagine the self, poor self, that it's our tiny consciousness, because it's tiny, people, compared to where we have been traveling, right? And there's so many experiences. That's wonderful to think that we are much more than we look like. We don't have to worry about celebrities. That's so silly, because it's only something, an image of a tiny part of our immortal existence. And, sorry about celebrities, but it's really very silly. What I can say. Because all of us, if we could say, can you imagine how many personalities, how many experiences of pain, love, sadness, happiness, being good, being bad, being
Yep.
childish, being very wise, being a person of religion, being a person of no religion. This is so wonderful to think that we have been given by the transcendent one that we call God, however people want to conceive. But we have been given this wonderful development possibilities that
Mhm.
we cannot even count, of knowing a lot, of developing ourselves. So all of this could not be contained in our egos. So our egos are very important because they are doing the tough job in this life of adaptation, of also, as you guys said, of trying to understand and to listen to this much higher consciousness that is trying to talk to the ego, especially from the middle age, our middle age, around 35, 40, and
And
over.
beyond.
Right. So the self will be sending dreams. We can talk about dreams, that it's great. I know Jussara and all of you like.
Yes.
Yeah, Jussara has done a wonderful presentation about dreams. So talk. So the self, the higher self, tries to talk to the ego, to our smaller consciousness, through dreams, synchronicities. We are going to be talking in the podcast about synchronicities. Also, spiritual experiences, so many ways, intuitions. So, because it's kind of difficult for our ego to perceive, to have this conversation with this higher self that is within us.
Yes.
So, I wanted to ask you guys,
Uh-huh.
mm, since Joanna talks a lot and she has wonderful books about the gospel and psychology. So, and Anne said that remind us that Joanna says, oh, we can choose the path of religion, because religions are going to speak directly, usually, to the self in a form
Mhm.
of images, sacred texts. So, it will help the self try to communicate with the ego, or through psychology. Why? Because we are studying the soul. So we are studying ourselves. So, uh, how do you think about that? Is that strange, or it's easier? How do you feel?
I'd love to hear from Jussara on that, but I just want to let everybody know that yes, Jussara made a beautiful presentation about dreams, and we will be back on an episode about dreams later on. So be on the lookout for that. But Jussara, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Well, that there are so many things and things that I'm sure Anne would like to talk about as well. But while sometimes, it's so amazing how we have to go the extra mile, because in a way we also talked very lightly about the desires of people to be noted next to what we call celebrities.
Right.
But it tells us so much. I mean, not being a psychologist, not being from the area as well, but it's doing my best to understand and to learn, especially from Dr. Anahy. I was thinking that, when we do that, I think that if I were a psychologist or a psychiatrist, I would say take a picture with the person that you like more and bring it to me. Then we will know who they are. What is your role model? Is a
Interesting.
supermodel? Is a soccer player? Is a Mother Teresa? Is a Divaldo from? So it will tell me so much about you and your desires, and how you try to mirror them. And so I think it's very interesting. And even when we talk about dreams, because this is a dream, like I say, I dreamed that I could do that, which is a different kind of dream, but it's a we can use this terminology as well. But all the time through everything that is happening and that we are selecting to our lives talks about us.
That's
Like,
right.
I was thinking about even as we share the same thing, right? The Star Trek and Next Generation and all of those, those movies that talks about the future. I may think about the past, but I'm really so interested in the future of what it is for me to do, for me to learn and to discover, and being amazed and thinking about Socrates. What I know is that I know nothing, and I want to understand more, and I want to pursue this way. And during our dream state as well is when a bit more liberated from the physicality, from everything that pulls us to life on earth. I can see myself better. But even when we return in the awakening stage, and if we do not pay attention, even if it fragments, because normally we do not understand everything, but you start analyzing. That's why I think both Freud and Jung, and of course Joanna de Angelis, tells us to pay attention at all the symbols that appear in our dreams, because they may be, digging up things that we need them to come to the surface at a certain point, and in this way work for the higher self. So it is fascinating. I mean, the self-discovery journey.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the last one.
Yes. Awesome. Anne, do you want to add anything to the topic? I think this is an amazing discussion here, by the way, right? We could say, because Anne asked, what is the definition? The higher self is the self with a capital S that represent the spirit, right? So Andrew's story. No, there's so much more that we explore here together. So I'm really excited to hear from you as well, Anne.
Yeah, and one thing that was crossing my mind, just like Jussara was saying, the spirits in the spirits book say that the most important job we have to do in our lives here is to get to know ourselves, and how hard that is, because we've built up this image of this ego, of this tiny bit of our eternal being, and we are thinking that's it. And so we have to reframe it, as they say. And to reframe it, you have to have a bit of humility, because to get down from the pedestal of the ego and say, no, this is not it. This little bit is not, this is just a little bit. This is the ego, this is consciousness, but we've got all this universe of the unconscious. And all the things that went before, but in which they are, like, sometimes people are afraid that there might be things that are not so good that we've done in the past, and all this kind of guilt trip kind of thing. we have everything, as Anahy was saying, the good, the bad, the beautiful and the ugly, it's all there. But also we have the unknown, the potential that we haven't developed as yet. So it is just like humbling. And it's just like if we just step back our ego for a moment and let this universe just come into our lives and present itself, what might not happen, it's just, when I think of it, it just it seems amazing. And I do feel humbled, and I think, whoa, I just feel like, I am that child at nursery, and it's, this university is coming down and knocking on the door, and I just feel that distance. But we all have the possibility to grow and develop at our own speed. There's no impositions. And I think that one of the great things, I was talking about humility, but lots of the virtues, like spoken about from a moral point of view, if you go to the church and things like that, or you must be good, you must be this, you must be that. And sometimes you try and you're pretending very well, but what's going on inside, maybe it's not 100%. So you say, oh yeah, congratulations. And you go like, I hate you. I wish I was first. This kind of, so we get so accustomed to hide our real feelings and just pretend and try to present what is asked of us, that we lose track that we actually do sometimes feel like that. And that doesn't condemn us. That just shows us that we are still there, and that we have work to do, things to develop, discoveries to make about who we truly are, and that we are lovable, and that we can love ourselves however we are. Because we are I always remember this, Joanna de Angelis says, today you are at the pinnacle of your progression. You've never been as progressed as today, because progression only goes in one direction. So yes, as much as you might feel, oh, I'm not very good, you're way better than you ever were before.
I love it. Thank you, Anne.
Not to be afraid, and to be humble, to look at these big questions, these big asks.
Awesome. Anahy, can you drive home? We're coming close to our conversation. Can you drive it home, the notions that we talked today, and how Joanna, that was referenced several times today, how can she explain to us what is I'm sorry, I keep saying inner self, the higher self, and why does it matter? Why is it important for us to be keenly aware of the notion of the duality, the person, as Jung would say, personality one, personality two, and love both, right? To, as Anne mentioned just now, to understand what could be considered all of our flaws, all the dark secrets, the things that we don't even want people to know about ourselves, and still we are lovable. We are accepted by this amazing mercy that is from our cosmic identity with the divine.
Well, yes. So let's try to put everything together. Just remembering that I was listening to you, and remembering that Jung says that the self can be defined as an inner guiding factor, okay, a psychic factor that guides the whole process of development of, and in this life, of the personality. So when Joanna says that the Jung's self concept of the self is the spirit, as guys were talking about, so why is that so important that she points out that is the spirit? Well, then we have a beautiful book. All of Joanna's books are beautiful, but that's an Encounter with Peace and Health, okay, where she says that our spiritual destiny is the numinous state. Numinous is the sacred, okay? So that's our spiritual destiny. And she says that every commitment must be undertaken so that the process of moral and spiritual self-improvement, as Anne was saying, okay, now it's the best version of myself. My spirit has won this right to be here with this ego and personality, learning more, right? So Joanna is saying that every commitment must be undertaken so that the process of moral and spiritual self-improvement takes place without setbacks or fear in the face of our progress and achievements. Because, she says, the search for enlightenment, aren't we all looking for enlightenment? That is the conquest of self transcendence, being much more than what we perceive ourselves as being, and following who? Our divine master and friend, our Jesus, right? With all the gospel that he brought to us, that it's a wonderful, to my understanding, is the best psychological book and text ever written, right, for humanity, that we have such a hard time understanding, but it's everything there. Okay, this search, the way, the path for enlightenment, for expansion of our consciousness, so we need to conquer this self transcendence, this cosmic consciousness, right? And Joanna says this is an imperative of evolution. So the law of evolution, that it's divine, is helping us to follow this path. So it's so important to talk about our higher selves, because in the end we are talking about this expansion of evolution, this cosmic understanding of our path as spirits, right? And of our immortality, and this wonderful, wonderful God-given right that we all have to evolve, to live each time better experiences, because it's a right that we achieved in this search for the transcendence, and with our struggle to understand our souls, ourselves, our brothers and sisters, the law, the divine laws, everything that spiritist knowledge brings to us in such wonderful spirits as Divaldo, Chico, and all these wonderful, beautiful spirits from the spiritual realms that bring, as Joanna, that bring all this knowledge. So it's here, and it's not, it's here for the ego. So the ego is kind of tiny compared to the whole of our personalities that we have experienced. But it's such a wonderful right that we have this ego and possibility to evolve and to discover ourselves each time again, and each time deeper and deeper, so that one day we don't have even to reincarnate again, but we can leave this for another discussion, especially when we talk about dreams and synchronicity, that we are going to be seeing the ways that our higher self, so self with the capital S, talks to the ego. That's great. So I hope to see you all pretty soon again.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Anahy. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Jussara. Thank you for being here with us today. Just as a reference, if you don't know, I think all of you know, but Joanna de Angelis, spiritual author in collaboration with Divaldo, as Jussara mentioned earlier today, has had a very long standing collaborative path, but a lot of what we're referring today is part of what we call the psychological series, or the psychology collection that was authored by Joanna de Angelis in collaboration with Divaldo Franco, and it contains 16 books. So I urge all of you, if you have yet, to look for them. There are many of those books that are published, and they're also in ebook format, because they are really a gift to all of us to understand those concepts that are difficult, right? Difficult, but very essential for how we can evolve, how we can progress. But with that, I want to say see you next time and thank you everyone for being with us today. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.